Hello and welcome to everyone, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to The Network Effect. This is a show that brings you inspiring leaders, entrepreneurs who have expanded their businesses globally, and we share their stories of success so you can help to learn from their experiences. Welcome to the third episode. We're really grateful for all the messages of support we've been getting from the first couple. And if this is your first time joining in, obviously welcome as well. We're here every Wednesday at 2 p.m. So we hope we can bring you along to all of our future episodes as well. We have an exciting show for you lined up today. We have an amazing guest that Asma will be interviewing for us shortly. But we'll also be bringing you our new segment where Zain, myself, and Seraj, who will join us for that section, will be debating a few countries and looking at how to expand into those markets, also what the benefits are. So, Zain, do you want to tell us a little bit about the countries we're looking at?
Yeah, so today we've got an interesting selection. So everyone knows India is a very popular destination to scale to. So we thought, in South Asia, what are the other options? You've got Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. So compared to India, how do these kind of weigh up? So Ben, Seraj and I each going to represent one of those countries. You'll find out a little bit later who's representing which. And we're going to pitch for 90 seconds. So everyone votes in the audience, tell us which pitches you liked, which country you think sounds attractive. And then we'll quickly, between us, debate those pitches and which country we think is the best.
Yeah, exactly. We'd really love for everybody to get involved and to engage in the chat. Obviously, a big part of the network effect is people being able to connect and to find, obviously, in this case, some business to be able to work on together. So please say hi in the chat. We'll be in there in a minute. And then, as we mentioned, when we come around to our segment, we'd love to get your feedback, to get your thoughts on who represented their country best and put forward some of the best incentives and benefits to expanding into those markets. But I guess without further ado, we'll jump into our interview with Neetu.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining me with our third interview of this network effect. And it's been a pretty exciting time, actually. We've interviewed some really inspirational people over the last couple of weeks, and today's no exception. I am really excited, actually, to talk to our guest today. She's become a great friend. I met her a few years ago when she was in London. She was part of the London Mayor's programme, actually, when she arrived in London, and that's when I met her through the launch of her business. Neetu Bhatia is an absolute inspiration as a woman. She has made huge success globally, and today we're going to ask her about her journey, some learnings from her experiences, and understand where she's going next. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to this woman who's a force to be reckoned with. Welcome, Neetu.
Asma, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been wonderful. I mean, I know we go back a few years now, but this is an amazing way to reconnect.
Absolutely. No, and thank you very much for agreeing to be on the show as well. I mean, a person, obviously, at your level, you're so busy all the time, building businesses, especially after COVID, pivoting, innovating, oh gosh, all the exciting things that you do. But I'm really, really pleased to have you on here. So Neetu, I'm going to start. I mean, you're obviously an extremely inspiring woman in itself, a woman of significant power. You started a very successful career. And one would think, you'd made it, you were in McKinsey, right, at the top of your game. You're managing huge, huge projects worth multi-billion dollars. Why become an entrepreneur?
It's a great question. To be honest, the switch to become an entrepreneur, I guess I always had the gene in me, having come from a family of, my parents were, of course, educationalists, but my grandparents on both sides were entrepreneurs in their own right. And so I think some of that passed on, of course, but the bug didn't bite, I must say, until several years into a professional career, like you said, first with McKinsey and then with on Wall Street for over a decade. But it wasn't until you saw a problem in front of you, right, that you immediately felt like you wanted to create an impact by solving it. Did that bug sort of come to fore? And this was the summer of 2006, I believe. I was visiting home, and this was, of course, when I was nicely ensconced in a Wall Street career in New York. Uh, Headed back to India for the summer, literally a couple of days, or almost just a few days in a week during the summer. When my brother and I, who were visiting family, realized that there was, short of opening up the morning newspaper, no other way to figure out what was playing in the country or in the city that you were in, how to get access to sports and live entertainment. And that's what led to that's what led to looking at this problem and saying, hey, why don't we go back and make something happen. So that's sort of how that came about.
Fantastic. And that's really an ideal journey, because obviously you identified a problem and trying to solve that, and a great reason and a great starting point to sort of achieve a success. But one fascinating part of your story, really, well, actually it fascinates me personally, is I look at yourself and how you've had support from your family, and you've come from a business family as well. And then I look at myself and make the comparison, because as growing up as a child and as a young person, and being brought up in the UK as opposed to anywhere else. And my parents were really strict, right? So when I look at your story, your parents wanted you to be a cricketer, right? So as a female, I mean, I can understand a guy from, the subcontinent, and the parents are saying, we want you to be a sportsman, or, we want you to be a cricketer. But for a woman to be a cricketer and your parents being behind that is phenomenal. Given that parents generally, and from my own personal experiences, put obstacles in your way as much as possible, and marriage is the first thing on the cards. How did that come about?
Well, a lot of the credit here goes to my parents, right? I think fundamentally, so much as, of course, follow the cricket was, of course, while I was playing, I was probably good at it, which is why they wanted me to continue and continue to wear India colors someday. But I think it was really more to do with what they wanted me to do, which is follow my dream and follow my passion at the time. So there was never an obstacle, like you said, which is very much the norm for the day. For parents, my parents, I have been indeed fortunate to have them as parents. That they didn't, in fact, not only did they not put obstacles, but actually, in fact, encourage whatever it was that I wanted to pursue at the time. So and it was cricket, to be honest, growing up, they provided us pretty much everything from even with the limited means at the time that they had, everything from cricket to field hockey to soccer to whatever to football, any kind of gear that you wanted, you had it. And just because they wanted us to be well-rounded individuals, I think both me and my brother. So we've been incredibly fortunate, and I think really the underlying message there from them was follow whatever it is that you want to achieve, and go achieve it.
Fantastic. And that's really inspirational, because it makes me wonder, if more parents were like that, then I think a lot of people will be able to fulfill their dreams a lot sooner, rather than having to go through some of the struggles that we all experience. So just going back to what you described as your sort of starting point, you came back from the US from a very highly successful career that you were having. You've gone to India, you've identified a problem, and then you've decided that you need to solve this problem. So how did it all start? What were the problems? Because starting a company is not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. A lot of people think that it's easy, but it isn't. So it would be good to understand from your perspective. You're in India. Did you then at this point go back to the US, or did it all start from India?
Well, actually, it's interesting. It started. The idea came to us when we were visiting India, but then it further sort of solidified as we got back to New York and Silicon Valley. At the time, Akash was my brother and co-founder. At the time, was based out of Silicon Valley. The genesis of the idea was almost in both places. I mean, it was sort of a true India-US kind of a venture. Also, as part of as we were thinking through the idea, the plans, and what the next steps would be in terms of diligence, technical on ground, figuring out market opportunity, and other such things, what really came about was our initial and early backers. Our VC funding sort of lined up pretty much. soon after. And I think a lot of that also had to do with not just the idea and the fact that we wanted to go and build something, in a large enough market, but I think it also had to do with our prior sort of records as professionals. And I think, backing the team for our early backers, it was really the team. I mean, at the time, the idea was just still very much on paper. And the fact that these folks, our early backers and VC funders, opened up, wrote us a check, and told us go make something happen halfway across the world, was itself, quite amazing. And so to us, there really wasn't that much time to sit back, analyze, get into analysis paralysis. Do you quit a job or do you actually quit a career that you've been so well enhanced in? Put your stuff on a ship and go home and make something happen. We just did it. I mean, thankfully so. You get to India, and the opportunity is, all ahead of you. Of course, working in the subcontinent comes with its own set of challenges as well. But we've had the ability to create the amount of impact that we've been able to create, i.e., democratizing access to stuff that people loved through this time, has just, whether it's cricket or Bollywood or entertainment or just live, event options that people could now access on their fingertips. To be able to bring that and to bring those smiles to those millions of faces every single time has been professionally incredibly satisfying.
Fantastic. And so, Neetu, you've described this experience in a very positive way, right? So, fundraising is not an easy task in itself, right? Particularly for a company that has just something on paper, so no traction, little evidence of success. And so I'm sure people who are listening are going to want to understand a little bit more behind the mechanics of fundraising, the issues that you faced. And if you are a startup and you haven't quite got to that stage, it's an ideation stage that you're at, and you are trying to convince someone to back you. I mean, what was that sweet sauce that you had in your mind or you used to convince your fundraisers or your funding?
Sure. Well, no, I think you're absolutely right. It's not always easy. And we've seen that over time as the business grows as well, right? And it's not always a walk in the park. But that said, I think clearly always the focus is on the team, right? And
Yeah.
can this team deliver and execute to whatever plan it is that they sign up for, or as the plan changes, and morphs into something different as they go? Do the backers, come in? Usually, they would come in and back a team that is then they're confident is able to take that and sort of run with it, right? So, I think the focus should always first be on the team. Of course, what you're building as a product matters next, is incredibly important. What is it the problem that you're trying to solve? And of course, the size of the market that you're solving it for. I think all of those three things are pretty high on the list of potential, financiers. But at the same time, I think the fundamental, what it boils down to, especially when you're doing it on a piece of paper and you haven't really executed on it in the early stages, it's almost always the team. Actually, I can't think of anything else. It has to always be the team. And once you've been able to convince that you have the right team and you have the track record, no matter what, it doesn't have to be that you worked a long time. It just has to be that you have the conviction and the idea that you want to pursue, and who you're going to be pursuing it with. For me, I was fortunate to have a great co-founding team with me. One of whom is my brother and the guy who came up with the idea. The other is my best friend from college. So it was just a fantastic sort of coming together of like-minded people that were incredibly passionate about what we wanted to go back and do.
Yeah, I was going to say passion obviously comes across really well from there. And if your family members are in that business and you've got your closest friend, the passion would exude, and I can understand why they would back you straight away. So you've been funded now, and you've basically on this journey, you're building the company. So at that point, what happened next in terms of building it? So again, I'm just trying to kind of, visualize when you're starting this business, you've got the money, where do you go next? Is it that you needed to staff? Did you need to build the technology? How quickly did you get to monetization?
Sure. Well, great question. I think we quickly got to start to build. Actually, we even started to build a product as we were raising the funds, right? So, but obviously, the product is the first order of business. But even as you're building the product, you need to start building out the rest of the team, right? That you're going to need to grow and to scale the business. But what was also needed is to bring in customers, right? That's what's going to be critical. So in our case, the clients were, some of them were rather obvious clients. For example, the Board of Control for Cricket in India, the BCCI that runs the cricket, the obvious, live event promoters in the country, movie, multiplex, operators, and so on and so forth. So those are the obvious ones. But what was, so the top ones are the obvious ones. But as you continue to grow and seed a market, in our case, we were evangelizing the market. As you know, nothing existed before we got to India. Um, the idea of providing professional ticketing, electronic ticketing, get online, get on mobile, download an app or go to the web and buy your ticket was unheard of. Not only to the end users and the larger the population at large, but really also to a lot of the clients whose tickets we would be selling. So it was a lot of evangelizing. It was a lot of sort of education. It took explaining the benefits of manual, ticketing the age-old way to actually putting stuff up in on a technology system. And so that took so that all of that actually, especially if you're starting out in a completely new market. Anywhere in the world, it is going to take that amount of effort in terms of seeding, explaining, evangelizing what it is that you're trying to build and sell. But for us, it was fantastic to see that there was also the pull that existed from the demand side. So there was the supply side that some of the clients who needed some education on what it meant to go online. But it was also the pull from the demand side once they tasted the fact that you now had democratized the access to ticketing. It was fantastic. I mean, we had every single thing that we did sold out even before literally within minutes of it going on sale.
Wow.
So that's what got us a lot of the notoriety in the country as well, right? Because you're always satisfying 50,000 people in a stadium, but there's 50 million people standing outside that still want to get in, but you don't have tickets to sell.
So
So
if I had come to you, Neetu, last week, would I have got tickets for the England game?
yeah, that
Well, I missed a
that's
trick there,
right.
right?
It would absolutely depend on whether you were part of the 50,000 or you were part of the 50 million that were disappointed. But no, it was amazing. To give you an example, the ability to have the impact became very obvious to me, especially as we did the Cricket World Cup in 2010-11. We were able to convince a country that usually goes everything's lastminute.com, right? In terms of selling, purchasing tickets or even selling tickets. We were able to work with all of our partners and stakeholders to get tickets on sale at least a year ahead of schedule for the Cricket World Cup, so that people from all over the world could come in and watch the games, obviously. And but as we went on sale for the semis and finals for the Cricket World Cup, as you can imagine, the kind of supply, demand that existed way outstripped supply. We had people from all over the world clamoring for the tickets, especially for the semifinal where India played Pakistan, and for the finals, right, where India made it to the finals. It was quite an amazing experience. I literally had to go on national television to explain to people how those limited number of tickets were actually going to be dispersed. But yeah, no, those have been fun times, and that's when you realize the kind of change and impact that you're having, not just on a single market, but on an entire country and multiple countries in this case.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's truly commendable. Obviously, fast track growth and comes with its own challenges. So, whilst you're having success, I can imagine the level of challenges that you experience along the way. And I guess a lot of people that are listening and a lot of entrepreneurs and companies come to us in terms of asking us for advice on, how do we enter markets? How do we manage risk? How do we manage compliance? And with a business like yours, I'm sure there are all sorts of other challenges that come with it as well. So, when did you decide, or how do you know when to expand to another market? And what did you have to do in terms of planning? Was there any planning, or is it a case of, yes, we want to go to this market and that's what we're going to do, and you just do it?
No, I think this is an incredibly important question. Something that we hadn't, excuse me, immediately thought about because we'd gone so deep with the India and subcontinent market to begin with. In terms of building out the product, building a cutting edge technology product that the market had literally leapfrogged to and embraced because that was something, it was ultimately solving a problem that everybody really wanted, right? They wanted those tickets every single time. But as we built the product, we also got invited. We started to build a reputation that started to precede us in international and global circles. And we were invited to bid for the ticketing contract for the Rio Olympics, which to us was all of 5 years in, we were probably still the youngest ticketing company on the planet, and to be invited to the seat at the table at the biggest sporting sports ticketing endeavor that can ever be, and the most complex, we thought was amazing. First, even just to be invited, and then as we of course went through the process with the Olympics, and as you can imagine, those tend to take quite long as
Yeah.
they sort of go through their shortlisting process. We ended up being sort of in the final four, and then eventually in the final two. As we went through the process. And that's when we realized that we had a product that we had built that was ready for global prime time. And at that stage, we it was but obvious, and that we were going to expand globally. And so then came the challenge of what markets do you sort of go to. And I think for us, we kind of led from a position of strength. We knew we'd done a lot of work in cricket, and people with international events, world events, and that countries would recognize us, both end users who had used the platform as well as clients who were very familiar with what we did and had done up until then. So that was sort of the lens and the matrix we took to see what markets we would sort of immediately have an impact in and could expand into. And from there, of course, with one success comes another, and so
Of
on,
course.
because people hear about you, your reputation starts to talk, the work that you've done in other parts of the world carries over into others, and that's kind of how it led to from there.
Okay, brilliant. And so what are the plans for future expansion? Obviously, I mean, maybe I can step back a little bit back, because we've had COVID in the last 12 months, and Zoonga, obviously, your first business that you started may have been impacted by what's happened, live events particularly, was one. And how has that affected you? And then obviously you've got a new venture, you've innovated, you've pivoted, you've got FeelitLive. So if we can just understand, what's happened in the last 12 months and where you're going next.
Great. Well, I think the last 12 months for Zoonga, from a ticketing perspective, not just for Zoonga, but the entire industry around the world, has been significantly impacted. Obviously, all of the most events sort of, didn't happen or have not, occurred. We're still hearing, obviously, that even the Olympics has been significantly impacted. There are not going to be ticket sales anymore. It's going to be behind closed doors. So there are obviously the industry has been very significantly impacted. Through this time, since the pandemic hit, Zoonga, as a company that has ticketed multiple clients around the world, has tried to be the best partner we could in those trying circumstances to our clients. Sort of work with them to the extent there were refunds involved to people, for during this time. Work with that to get customers, money back into their pockets. Make sure we were, working with our clients to make all of those issues. Every single one has been grappling with the issues, as you can imagine, around the world. So that's the Zoonga part. As we were going into the pandemic, I also noticed one evening, excuse me, Chris Martin from Coldplay
Yeah.
tried to, get on from home and try to stream to an audience that he couldn't feel, that he couldn't touch anymore, and with whom he couldn't really interact. But he, obviously he'd written up some music and he wanted to get out there and connect with his fans and so on. Which is, when I looked at that, it dawned upon me that the future of most live experiences is also going to be virtual.
Yeah.
At which point, I set up a separate team, and we decided we would, because the technology is, of course, very different. You have ticketing technology at Zoonga, at the Zoonga level. FeelitLive is live streaming, it's video, it's engagement, it's monetization. It's a whole different platform. But what we were able to do with this amazing team was to put it together very quickly. We had a lot of folks that wanted to still be able to host an event and yet monetize, because obviously everybody was feeling the pain through the pandemic. So we were able to, in 2 weeks, launch a minimum viable product, an MVP version of the product, get it out there, start onboarding these clients who were really struggling, and be able to give them a platform to operate from. So it's been an incredible journey. Even in the last 12 months, it's been, I would say, we've packed in several years in these 12 months, and just kind of building out a platform and onboarding clients and getting them to, enabling them to be able to monetize for themselves and earn an income in this
Yeah.
time.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, it's really inspirational, all the things that you've done. And ideally, I mean, in an ideal world, I guess, when you're in a pandemic, I mean, a lot of people have pivoted, a lot of people have innovated and tried to change, but it obviously had a lot of impact on the way businesses have been affected by what COVID has brought on. So the fact that you've actually recognized and identified opportunities is, considerably commendable on its own. And so I guess now I'm going to put the lawyer in me, the legally mind in me, to ask you, because again, you're a highly successful entrepreneur. You're looking at some world international organizations where you're kind of collaborating with, and you're kind of reaching out to. And so global domination is definitely on the card somewhere at some point, and you're still at early stages. But along the way, and I see this with multinational companies, I see it with, even the largest companies in the world have challenges when you're entering markets. From, whether you go in and you think, we know we've got a great plan, we're excited about it, we're passionate about it, but quite often the wrong advice or the wrong information can lead you down a path that actually takes you longer to come back. Have you ever experienced that, or how do you manage that to avoid, getting into the entanglements that some people do?
Well, I do want to stress, and I cannot stress this enough, actually, not just, when you're expanding, but also when you're starting. I think it's incredibly important to have the right sort of external yet internal extension of your team with you. And by that, I mean, you have to have the right, lawyers working with you, whether it's company, formation, and then, sort of when you're expanding, of course, immigration and other things come into play. The other single most fundamental thing to do, even before you get the first dollar into the company, is to have a great accounting team, right? To have a great accounting set of advisors, your auditors, whoever it is that are going to then, of course, internally bookkeeping. I mean, these are not the the what they call the sexy items, obviously, that you need to focus on, but they are the details that actually will decide how you would end up, whether that's taking up a lot of your time operationally or allowing you to focus on the business that you need to grow. And I think making sure that you have the pipes in place to make sure that the product flow, the money flow, the people flow, right? All three of those flow properly is incredibly important starting out. I know it's when you're in high growth phase and you're going crazy, it's the last thing you want to do. Look in the rear view mirror and try and see what your bookkeeping looks like or what have you. But, hopefully you put that in, it's incredibly important to put those types of things in place before you start to, before you do anything, to be honest.
Yeah. Now that's really helpful. And I guess I asked this question because I come across obviously, as you know, multiple organisations and with multiple views on this subject. And I mean, I'm talking to a fund that was talking to me the other day about where their fund should be. And they said we struggled with 20 lawyers, right, with advice that we went from pillar to post to try and get the right advice. It's taken them 12 months to find the right options. And then if you're not, well, you know, if you're talking to entrepreneurs or you're talking to companies, one of the last things that they think about is the legal and the tax implications of where they're going, or the risk and the compliance of where they're going in their journey. And if they get that early on, it actually makes all of that difference to making sure the company is successful. And so quite often when people are funded, a lot of the money is being spent, but without realizing that you're spending it on all of those areas, because it's only when you look at the end of the year accounts. I mean, somebody said to me the other day, oh, actually, we looked at the end of year accounts and our biggest bill was our legal bill, right? And they hadn't even taken that into account. But have you manage it and plan it in advance, then you can reduce those costs significantly. So that's really helpful to understand. So Neetu, I would like to ask you a little bit more about FeelitLive. Because it's very sort of topical, it's very current, it's about tomorrow, it's about how things are going to be. So what are your predictions for the future in terms of events? Now, we're obviously coming out of COVID. UK has suffered quite significantly. We can see cases rising again. We don't know if there'll be another lockdown. Globally, that's an issue. Where are events going in the future? What is FeelitLive going to do? How is that going to be part of the future?
Sure. Well, I think what the last year and a half has done has pretty much sort of ingrained virtual in us. I mean, just look at us now, right? We're talking to each other, not something that we probably, and broadcasting ourselves, but not something that we would have probably considered about a year and a half ago. I know we've done this many times, we've met many times, and we just haven't had this type of a forum, but technology now is enabling us to do that. What FeelitLive, where we're going with FeelitLive, I do think when I recounted the Chris Martin story, was as I thought and envisioned what the future was going to look like. It wasn't just going to be through the pandemic, which was going to be virtual, obviously, but also when we did get back to whatever the sort of the next normal was going to be, that there was going to be a place for a huge place for hybrid. And what I mean by that is, what we with live events have been able to do is, as I said to you earlier, there were 50,000 happy people, but 50 million very, very disappointed people. What FeelitLive can now do is enable those 50 million disappointed people to also partake in those live events. Even if remotely, they would get a feel, and we've tried to make and build a platform in such a way that it mimics as close to real life and an in-person an event as possible, perhaps even better, because you've got the deep engagement options, you've got the ability to monetize, you've got the ability to be seen and heard with the content that you're interacting with the people you want to interact with, and so on. So I think that when this idea sort of came to me, that I did think about it not just 18 months into the future, but actually 18, 20 years into the future, that this is here to stay. And I think what this has really done in a way has expanded the ability to take a piece of content and touch more people around the world than you possibly ever could in a localized physical real world environment. So
Yeah.
very excited about what lies ahead of us across the world.
Brilliant. And so are you going to incorporate, I mean, obviously this is VR we are talking about. What about augmented reality? Is that going to be part of this? Or is that augmented reality when you can go into the space and you can feel that you're actually at the event? Is that right? This is my
Yes,
lack of knowledge.
No, absolutely. So AR, VR definitely, as as it starts to become more ubiquitous and more affordable, obviously. But until such time, definitely at least be have the ability to go. For example, a simple example is going backstage. Let's say even with Chris Martin, right? So he finishes up a concert, and now you could be sitting in India and going backstage with him in LA while
Yeah.
he's in LA, right? And this was not possible, or I mean, while it was possible, hadn't been
Yeah.
thought through before. And what's amazing to me is again that one more opportunity that is in front of us to democratize even further I mean, tickets did it with Zoonga to a certain extent in the physical world. But now there are no boundaries, there are no constraints.
Yeah.
And to me, that is super exciting.
No, this is absolutely fantastic, Neetu, and just listening to your story. I mean, you've a highly successful person already, right? Without even trying that much. But then, you're taking all these risks. You're actually creating businesses that are disrupting global space, not just India. And I just think it's incredible. The story is incredible. Your background is incredible. And so what is next for you as personally, right? You've got Zoonga, you've got FeelitLive. Are you a serial entrepreneur, or are you going to put all your focus into one?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, they're both my babies. Obviously the focus at the moment is 100% on FeelitLive. As Zoonga is an established business around the world, has its own team that runs, the product, runs the business. And it has clients know it. It has long-term contracts in multiple different regions and so on. So that's an ongoing business. FeelitLive is the new baby, is the new kid on the block, and that is something that I'm 100% focused on. I think, as I said, I do think this is where the future lies. To me, what's exciting is not to be seeing those 50 million disappointed fans every single time, but to be able to give them an opportunity also to be a part of this. And that is super exciting. That's what gets me up every morning, and that's what gets my team up every morning. I mean, we're super excited to be able to see, and also bringing mind you, we're talking about the 50 million fans on the one side, but think about the creators that have always, the closet musicians, the closet, radio announcers, the people that wanted sportscasters. I'll give you one example of one of our power users on FeelitLive is someone who's from your neck of the woods, Anshu Jain, who was the former CEO co-CEO of Deutsche Bank.
Yeah.
He's a passionate cricket fan. And up until he interacted with FeelitLive, FeelitLive sort of allowed him I should say, a second career as a non-banker, as a passionate sportscaster, because he's been going live from all of the cricket matches that India is playing in England at the moment. So
Yes.
so the opportunity on the creator side to see people be able to take a platform, and the platform enables them to not only sort of go after their passions, but also eventually monetize and engage with the audiences that are following them, is amazing. So
Superb.
it's exciting.
Yeah, this is really exciting. So, I mean, to me, I'm just listening to you there. This is really the power of the network effect, because now I can get tickets to every match, right? So I have got somebody in my network who has access to tickets for pretty much every sporting event around the world. So that's absolutely amazing. Neetu, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and I thoroughly enjoyed the interview. And I will say to the audience, if there are any questions for Neetu, please do send them in, and we will try and get those answered for you. But for today, I'd like to thank you again, Neetu, and hopefully I'll be in touch later on. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Take care.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Esther.
Seamless transition. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much. Seraj, good to have you. Welcome to the studio. Well, this way. There we go.
Thank you. Good to be here. Good to be here finally.
I know. We've got the upgrade. Yeah.
Yeah, my flight was
quarantine.
seamless and quick. I like it.
Yeah, instant, some might say. Fantastic. Well, I mean, guys, I don't know about you, but that was a hat trick, I guess, from Asma. Well done on getting through 3 amazing interviews, and I guess good luck continuing on with them. But I mean, it was excellent to see. I know I had some questions, but we unfortunately ran out of time. But just to see the opportunity that Neetu was able to see in the market, to understand it, and then just to sort of take that chance and stepping out and going for it is, I think, obviously the story every entrepreneur kind of wants to have.
Yeah, I think it was the perfect pivot, so to speak. So, being in the ticketing event space, but then looking at what's happening with COVID, what is actually going to work? People aren't going to events physically because of all the lockdowns. What can we do with that? And I like the fact that Neetu said this was not just let's pivot for COVID, it's long term. So, people are interested in knowing what's going on behind the scenes. When there is an event with, 50,000, 100,000 capacity, what about all the other millions that want to be part of it? So that long-term pivot, which solves a problem now, so you get immediate users using your existing network through your previous business, is genius.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other thing is also that the fact that she had the MVP up in 2 weeks is again, that's the testament to the new age of lean thinking. A couple of years ago, people would have tinkered with the product for months and months, wouldn't show it to anyone before it's perfect. And I think the lean thinking just kind of gets us from an idea to something in the market in 2 weeks is fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it's definitely good to get some of the insights there as well and to be able to speak to someone and to understand as well where building up that brand reputation can be very helpful as well in the scaling operation. I think that was definitely very interesting to hear about as well, where she's saying the reputation sort of preceded her, which made entering into new markets quite successful. So I think that becomes something you have to start to plan for early as well, is what there might be the other markets you want to, but if you're starting to get traction in another market that might have a similar situation, it might be in a similar market point, whether it's culturally, whether it's access to technology or something, to start also looking at that and take that into consideration as well of, is it going to be an easy transition because this market's maybe heard of you as well as, not just automatically going for the US because it might be the biggest market and so forth as well.
Yeah, I think if you look at Neetu's journey as well, she had a career, very successful career, then pivoted, then had a business, then moved to the next business. Everything was very calculated, or even if it's not planned or calculated, there was a journey. A lot of entrepreneurs these days think, I'm going to set up a business, going to have success from day one. But these things take time, experience, that all affects everything. So I think there's a key element of patience and being strategic and knowing where your strengths are, experiences, contacts in your network, and so on.
Yeah, and then the other thing is she also mentioned that you got to focus on the unsexy stuff like lawyers. Sorry.
What are you
Zain.
trying to say, sir?
No, but we all can't be GQ models like you. But it's the stuff like lawyers, accounting team, and immigration are those crucial factors that in the hustle of the everyday startup, you tend to leave and say, that's not as important. So she kind of said again that it's crucial right up front to have that, which I thought was really interesting. And then the last thing is that in the chat I asked about, we often said to not work with family and friends. And she went out and did both, right? So her partners are there, and it was so cool that I think it's Arpita is the name, is that friend, and said that they just stuck to really tight governance and best practice when it comes to keeping things really clean, when it comes to not getting that blend of what's personal and what's work, because it can be quite tricky.
Yeah, I think having clear guidelines is always helpful there, having a role and so forth when getting other people into business. So, I think definitely another great interview. If you're just joining us by a chance, worth going back and watching on demand. Obviously, everything we've got will be out on YouTube and in a podcast format and so forth in the coming days. So. I guess without further ado, we're going to jump into our new segment. We don't have a snazzy intro video yet, but keep an eye out for that. But what we're going to look to do every week is to have a bit of a debate, a three-way debate between the three of us. We're going to have selected some countries, and we're just going to run you through some of the market information for that country, some of the benefits and industries that are worth scaling into there, just so we can share a bit of insight and get people thinking about countries they may not necessarily be aware of at the moment, just some of the things you need to be thinking of. So each of us is going to dive into a country just with a quick 90-second sales pitch or debate, I guess. We've got a chance to pitch ourselves, and then at the end we'd love for you to vote. Tell us who you think had the best pitch, which country you're now excited to expand into, and we'll pick a bit of a winner. Obviously it's a friendly competition, but a bit of competition's always good, I think. So I guess we'll jump in first with Zain's going to take it away with Pakistan.
Up first. Okay. So, I'll start my pitch. So when you're scaling a business, I mean, there's only ultimately one real goal when you're moving to a new market. That's finding new customers, increasing sales. So if we look at Pakistan, it's the second largest economy in South Asia. It has the fifth largest population in the world at around 220 million. And it's got a burgeoning educated middle class with a median age of 22. So what does that mean? It means there's a large population, diversified consumer base, high disposable income. So it's just a massive opportunity across the board with, given that young age, long consumption potential, long term as well. And in fact, Goldman Sachs has said that they predict Pakistan could be one of the world's largest economies over the next 50 years. So the opportunity there is huge. So for any foreign business considering South Asia, looking at India, Pakistan's now a serious contender. And if you look at the different grants incentives, there are double taxation treaties, low interest loans, R&D grants. In fact, there are even laws in place to safeguard foreign investment, because a lot of the concerns historically have been over security, safety. But if you look back at the last 5 to 8 years, rates of terrorism have halved, stability has increased, and more US companies are scaling into the region. And having said that, it's still a brand new region for a lot of foreign companies other than the large conglomerates. So there's a big opportunity there to get in before your competition. So for me, that's why Pakistan is the country in South Asia to scale to.
Wow.
Very good, very good.
Impressive.
There we go,
impressive.
Seraj. Can you?
Throws down the gauntlet. I like it.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Gauntlet laid.
Yeah.
Who's next?
I think it's
me.
Seraj with Sri Lanka.
All right, so I've got Sri Lanka, and when you're looking at a home or anywhere where you want to be, there's three really important things, and that's location, location, and location. And Sri Lanka is perfectly positioned next to or in between two of the largest markets, India and China. And it's on that route. It's on the kind of the route where a lot of the trade comes past. So from a position point of view, it's great. From a setup point of view, you only need 2 shareholders and 1 director to set up a company in Sri Lanka, an LLC, and none of them need to be local. They can all be foreigners. You don't have to fly in there to set it up. It's really easy. There's no minimum paid up kind of share capital that's needed. You only need a local company secretary, and that there are services that provide that at a minimal cost. So just from the country itself, firstly, life expectancy is quite high at 76, which is highest out of the 3 countries we're talking. There's a low population, and I take that as a good thing. It's only 22 million, and therefore there's a lot of opportunity there. The poverty headcount is 4.1, which is basically the percentage of poverty that lives below the poverty line. Population that lives below the poverty line, which is really low. And then just a few other things. I mean, it's a tropical island. That's all I want to say. It's a tropical island. You can live on the beach for really cheap. If you're going on weekends and holidays, there's mountains, beaches, jungles, temples. It's a very secured nation. There was a civil war between 83 and 2009. It's well over. Because of that, a lot of the 30-somethings got educated overseas, and they're all coming back, bringing that knowledge, opening businesses. There's modern restaurants, coffee shops, all those type of things to set up there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to set up and live. That's what I'm saying.
Sounds more like a holiday to me.
I was about to say, it sounds like Seraj might be moving there is there with his sales pitch. Yeah. Cool. Well, all right. I guess I'll go lucky last. And today I'm covering off Bangladesh. So we had Seraj with Sri Lanka, Ben with Bangladesh. Unfortunately, I didn't think we could find a Z country for you to do, Zain.
Not this week. Zanzibar next time.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's a couple of reasons that I thought Bangladesh is the place to pick. I mean, the government is incentivizing foreign investment. There's a strong demand for product and services, and it has consistent economic growth. So, I mean, just to give you a little bit of a look at the potential market, Bangladesh is the 8th most populous country in the world with 168 million people. So eight times Sri Lanka there, Shiraz, just to throw a little dig in there.
Pakistan's 10 times.
Exactly. In 2019, the GDP was 317 billion, so that there's a massive market potential there. That was a growth rate of 7.9%. But one of the really impressive things is that the Bangladesh market has been consistently growing for the last 16 years. So for 16 years in a row, they've had a minimum of 5.1% growth in the economy. And they've been able to halve the poverty in the country in the last decade as well. So massive amount of potential and demand for product and consumption there as well. If you are seeking to set up a business in Bangladesh, one of the strong benefits is that a lot of business dealings are done in English. So that's the set expectation, so very easy transition into the market. They also have one of the lowest wage rates in the world. So this has fueled massive expanding industrial business, mostly led by the RMG industry, which is the ready-made garments. So, I mean, that alone turns over 25 billion of the GDP for Bangladesh. Bangladesh is the third largest exporter to the European Union and the fourth largest to the US. So just to run you through, that's about 35% of the GDP. A couple of other key areas is the agriculture sector in Bangladesh. They hire 40% of the population is based in agriculture. The services sector is the next biggest market. It doesn't hire that many people, but it accounts for 50% of the GDP, and it's estimated this is the highest growth area of the next decade. So the services industry includes communication technology, IT services, all of that sort of side as well. So that's definitely a massive opportunity, which I think is a big portion of the expanding companies at the moment. I will skip ahead a little bit as well because I realize I'm running on a little bit longer than you guys. I know.
90 minutes or 90 seconds?
I'll throw in a negative just to make it up for you. So the corporate tax rate in Bangladesh is quite high. So if you're not a publicly traded company, you are looking at 40%. Although the government is really pushing and incentivizing foreign investment. So they've put together a whole list of goodies for foreign investment in Bangladesh, from no ceilings on investment, there's tax holidays, you can get exemption on income tax for up to 3 years for expatriate employees. So there's a whole list I could have gone through as well, but I won't go on with it. I think Bangladesh is definitely the up and coming market to be a part of. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. There's the buzzer to let us out.
Some solid pitches there.
I know. So I think overall, and please feel free, any questions or comments or whoever you thought did maybe the best job, whichever country like Bangladesh that you think you might want to expand into next, please chuck your vote down in the queue and we'll see who did the best job. But I think overall what we wanted to highlight is that there are some great alternatives to India. In that market, there are some great up-and-coming opportunities. So it's always worth exploring the market to see where there might be some very high potential, especially over the next decade, of getting into these markets almost early before they're oversaturated, and to sort of be a part of it.
Yeah, I think one of the things Seraj mentioned, you talk about location. So, you know, we've got Sri Lanka nicely placed there. So just to advocate for Pakistan, from a location perspective, on one side we've got China, arguably the largest economy in the world, fantastic relationship there. Then you've got a border that goes into the Gulf states, the most financially liquid countries in the world, brilliant partnership there. They're not up kind of northwest. You've got the Central Asian countries with all the oil and gases. So strategically, I don't think you've got a better location than that. In terms of investment. And then that just kind of leads into the industries that Ben was touching on. So Pakistan's got manufacturing, oil and gas, mining, but that's the traditional ones. It's actually got the fastest growing retail market on the planet. And if you look at how tough retail's been hit in COVID times, if you're looking for a bounce back, what better an opportunity than a country which has the fastest growing retail opportunity? And on that note, Pepsi, in the past 5 years, have invested $800 million into Pakistan, and Coke $500 million because of that massive young population to tap into. So, I mean, Pakistan, if you ask me.
I mean, all the clothes that you're buying in Pakistan are getting made in Bangladesh. So, you know, it depends what side of the coin you're on.
Again, is you can live on the beach and play cricket And Sri Lanka, we've won a World Cup. Bangladesh, I don't know where they are. No, I just, the interesting thing for me is that when choosing the countries and doing a bit of research, I personally had never thought of going to Sri Lanka as a destination. It's just, or you kind of have Singapore that pops up, India everyone talks about, but you don't think of these three countries until you do a little bit of digging, and you can kind of go, well, there's so many more options out there, and it's kind of dependent on the kind of lifestyle that you want to live. It's the kind of business you want to open up, but there really are so many options. I would never have thought of Sri Lanka as an option, but as I researched it a bit more, it became a properly viable option as a place to be.
Exactly. And I think that's what we want to hopefully obviously promote with this segment as well, is to share a bit of information, and we'll hopefully build up some alternative ways to look at it. So, Seraj, I think unfortunately, from my perspective, you're going to win. So I think there's been some votes. I think just from location, as you mentioned, startup cost, Cheryl's just jumped in and said Sri Lanka as well. Naz thinks all three are very attractive, so I think we've all done a good job. But we'll give it to you this week.
Did you pay these people off in the comments whilst we were off screen?
Are those all my South African buddies voting for me? I didn't,
Yeah. Fantastic. So yeah, I think hopefully that's been informative and a quick little bit of extra information to get you excited about the global markets. We'll look out for announcements on our LinkedIn for the next 3 countries, and then if you have questions about them or suggestions, obviously please reach out to us. But we'll repeat this segment every week as well, so we'll start diving into some different areas. Really excited to sort of touch on some of the Asian locations as well as the Middle East, and obviously dive into Europe as well. Kevin's got your back, Seraj, with Sri Lanka as well. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of The Network Effect. We hope you've really enjoyed it. We'll be back next week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. with another amazing guest. We'll have this segment as well, and we really look forward to connecting with everybody. And yeah, hopefully enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you back here Wednesday, 2 p.m. for episode 4.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.